Welcome to the Unlist. Today we are going to talk about Clubman Pinaud, the brand. I kind of alluded to this in my last video, and I decided to go ahead and just do it because why not? If you watched my previous video, which was basically just a general aftershave unlist where I just prattled off a bunch of aftershaves and talked about how I liked them or whatever, I said that the Clubman Pinaud brand kind of needs its own video because they've got so much history and there's a whole lot of shit with them. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Might as well. So the thing is about Clubman Pinaud, what you have to understand is that they have a strange place in history, and they also have a strange place in the market itself. And the primary reason for that, Clubman Pinaud is kind of a surviving vestige remnant of the original house of Edouard Pinaud, a famous French barber who also became a perfumer and who was a court perfumer for a time and eventually established his own high perfumery house, his own haute parfumerie, in the same train of thought as an Hubigant, as a Guerlain, and a Caron. So there was a point in time when you had like this big three, big four of grand, opulent French perfume houses, and it was Guerlain, Caron, Hubigant, Pinaud. Pinaud being the second oldest. Hubigant was the oldest, and then after Hubigant was Pinaud. Then comes Guerlain, and then finally Caron at the turn of the 20th century. So that's a pretty big deal. I mean, that's you're coming from that pedigree, right? So that's something. And then how do you go from that? How do you go from that pedigree to being plastic bottle aftershaves sold in a select number of drugstores and big box retailers? How do you go from like being waxed philosophic and waxed poetic by stuff like Caf Bon or Kafkask or Persolaise or my friend JJ who likes to write big soliloquies about perfume and stuff? How do you go from that sort of romanticized perfumery to freaking discount shaving accessories at your local bodega or Dwayne Reed or Bartell or Rite Aid? Like, how do you go from that to that, right? Where is that pipeline? Like I said, how do you get these massive 3,000 word paeans written about how artistic and transcendental you are to, soothe your skin after a shave? Where is that? That's a big disconnect there. So, and the answer to that question is, well, you follow the money. And so, simply put, Edouard Pinaud, aka Edie Pinaud, was a barber first and foremost. So he liked to make functional fragrances. He liked to make perfume that had a purpose. The original Lilac Vegetal that he created was meant as a deodorizing scent for the Cossacks. Yes, I said it. The Cossacks commissioned him to create them something that they could wear, the military could out in the fields with their swinging their swords and using their early rifles and whatever. And if they didn't have bath water available, they didn't have access to good hygiene, they could splash on something that could both deodorize and then I guess somewhat disinfect them with alcohol and then leave behind a scent that could mask their body odor effectively. And he came up with Lilac Vegetal. And that's why the bottle says on it, even the modern day plastic ones, says hygiene et toilette. Hygiene et toilette. So that was the point. It was used in good hygiene. Now, whether or not it really, promotes good hygiene, I mean, it's alcohol. It promotes some kind of hygiene, but it's not better than a bar of soap, obviously. But That's the mentality of Edward Pinaud. All of his other perfumes that he made, toilet waters, cologne waters, various other things, was secondary to that. Now, the most famous product of the Clubman Pinaud range, which is Clubman Pinaud, was not perfumed by E.D. Pinaud, Edouard Pinaud, because he died in the 1860s. Okay? He was already gone. He was long gone. So, and what's funny about that is his year of death is actually the year that the brand claims is their year of launch. So, what they claim is their launch year is actually the year he died. And there's all kinds of conflicting information about it. But if you look at what's on the Pinaud website, and they say since 1860 whatever, but then you go looking at the life of Edward Pinaud, he died that year. So how can the company have been founded the year he died? It doesn't make sense. So what did happen, though, is the House of Pinaud continued on. So he had family, he had business partners. They kept it going. But like most things, when the initial creator passes away, there's usually a decline if there isn't good management, if there isn't a good trust to pass it on to. So Guerlain had the dynastic approach. You know, they would pass it down to people in the family who would take up the perfumery. So you had Pierre Pascal, and then Aimé Guerlain, and then you had Jacques Guerlain, and then Jean-Paul Guerlain. But Pinaud didn't benefit from that. And Houbigant, well, he had partners too. And also people that bought his brand and continued on, like Paul Parquet, for example. Paul Parquet was not related to Houbigant at all, but he bought the house, and he was already a chemist in his own right, so he bought the house and began making his own perfumes and just piggybacked off the Houbigant name. So his creations are arguably more famous than some of the ones that the actual Houbigant made, you know, stuff like Fugere Royale. Okay, so Pinaud couldn't benefit from that. Pinaud actually had a similar circumstance as Caron, where Ernest Daltroff passed away and he had no one to really give the house to. So Felice Wanapuya carried it on, and she just kind of kept it at its status quo, and you know, didn't really release any new perfumes at all. And then, you know, that story, I don't need to really tell you about what happened to Caron. You already know. They began to do stuff in the 70s and 80s under you know, different perfumers and then different owners, Ailes Group and all that stuff. But that was a very slow, long, sad death, actually. And now they're with the Rothschilds, so who knows what's going to happen now. Pinaud didn't have any of that either, though. Pinaud didn't have interested business partners. They didn't have family. They didn't have lovers. They didn't have anything. So what ultimately happened was the house was kind of forced to go back to its roots. And even though it continued to sell perfume, I mean, E.D. Pinaud had a stall at the Paris World's Fair, very illustrious, right next to Guerlain, okay, had a stall at the Paris World's Expo when the Eiffel Tower first went up. So, you know, they were still in the game. They weren't out yet. But the thing is, they went back to their roots, and they focused on the shaving. They focused on the barber accessories. So Pinaud eventually just folded back into being more like Penhaligon's, G.O.F. Trumper, the French equivalent. They became the French equivalent to those British barbershop brands, you know. So again, True Fit and Hill, D.R. Harris comes to mind, those sort of things. and Taylor of Old Bond Street's another one. So that's kind of where they went. Now, the first popular product, the first thing that you could say really put Pinaud in that realm of shaving, hygiene, is the Lilac Vegetal. This is a very divisive fragrance. I will not kid you. Very divisive. It's called the Veg by a lot of its hardcore fans. I am not one of those, so I don't call it the Veg. I just call it Lilac Vegetal. But during the existence of Pinaud as a high perfume brand, this was still their most popular product because of that association of hygiene, okay, of being clean. So a lot of people, especially in France, bought bottles of this and kept this in their cabinet, kept this in their bathroom, and would use it as aftershave, would use it as a toilet before going out somewhere, you know, just general good upkeep, good grooming, right? Some folks even splashed it in their hair, although it's not really a proper hair tonic, but they did. It doesn't have a terrible smell. It neither smells as bad as people say, nor does it smell as good as its fans. I'm going to put some on, actually, since I'm already here. It's already open, and I'm actually not wearing any fragrance while recording this video. So you get to watch me apply some veg on the back of my neck. How does that sound? Does that get you going? Are your juices flowing now? I'm putting on some veg. And I'm only calling it that for you guys. I don't actually call it the Veg. I just call it Lilac Vegetal. But anyway, that's my point. So I'm only going to wear a little bit. I don't want to reek of this stuff too much. It's, like I said, I don't hate it, but it's not amazing. So the thing is, as I was saying, this neither smells as bad as people claim, nor does it really smell revelatory. The people who love this stuff, they really love this stuff in a scary way, and I neither get them, nor do I get the lovers and the haters. I don't get either group. I don't understand. So what this smells like to me is just powdery violets and musk. The whole veg thing comes from some kind of musk profile that kind of implies a doughy green feeling. And of course, I'm not a perfumer, so I don't know the exact materials that are in this, but it's not galbanum. And of course, this is long before cis-3-hexanol really existed, so it's not that either. But there's some kind of doughy material that kind of feels green, but feels green in a way that's not super pleasant. It's not a leafy green, not a grassy green. It's like a cabbage kind of green. It's like a slightly decomposed swamp gas kind of green. And I'm not sure what material is causing that smell, but you're getting that smell along with civet musk, some kind of synthetic proxy nowadays, right? Not real stuff, but you're getting some kind of civet musk in here with that green smell, and then you're getting the lilacs on top. And honestly, that sort of rotted vegetable green smell, that's gone in like 5 minutes. So yeah, that's the most unpleasant part, and it's gone in 5 minutes. If you can wait long enough to listen to your favorite song, play a song on Spotify or something, by the time that song is over, the gross part's gone, and what is left is just powdery lilacs and the musk, like I said. So if you like an old school fatty sort of animal musk, you like that, and then you like lilacs, well then you're in luck, because this stuff is dirt cheap and you'll probably enjoy it. And that's the skinny it. That's the long and the short. There's nothing more to it than that. They tell you on the bottle that it's an all-over body freshener and that it instantly cools and instantly tones. No, doesn't do any of those things. I don't feel particularly fresh wearing this. My skin doesn't feel cool or toned. I just feel like I'm wearing some really old floral musk perfume from literally 2 centuries ago. And, that's not bad. I mean, it's cool. I like. If you're a fan of Jockey Club, okay, Caswell Macy, not 1840, guys, 1840 Caswell Macy. If you're a fan of Jockey Club, you'll probably like this. I don't mean the heritage one either. I'm talking like this one, guys. Yeah, here we go. Sorry if my shirt was riding up there a little bit, but what do you want from me? I'm a fat ass. Deal with it. So, if you saw what kind of boxers I was wearing, then I don't care. If I don't care, then you don't care. So that's how I look at it. You're not entitled to care if I don't care. So, if you like this, guys, you'll probably like this. So that's I'm not going to say any more on it, but it's a similar sort of powdery floral musk profile. The difference is this is more pleasant because there's no green in here. There's no weird cabbagey rotten smell in this. But the Lilac Vegetal definitely has more of that, that profile. But once, like I said, once it dries down, it's pretty pleasant. It's not particularly interesting. That's the biggest sin. The biggest sin that Lilac Vegetal committed, in my eyes, is just being boring. It smells like... A lot of people say it smells like nursing homes, but I don't spend time in nursing homes, so I can't really confirm that. Other people say it smells like old folks. And I'm like, well, yeah, a lot of old people grew up using that, so they're going to keep using it because they're familiar with it. So it's logical that it will smell like old folks. It doesn't mean that young folks can't wear it too. It just means that you're going to more likely encounter it on an old person because they already know what it is. Right? You got to use critical thinking here, guys. It's not hard. Now, the other big thing that put Pinaud on the map after the Lilac Vegetal, which, like I said, when the brand went back to their roots, when they went back to their shaving roots and their barbershop roots, the Lilac Vegetal took off. It blew up again. It was already popular somewhat, but it got more popular. Suddenly, people were looking for it by name and stuff like that. This came along. It didn't look like this. It didn't have these silly graphics like this, but let's just say that Pinaud put out a bay rum. And you have to realize, in the late 1800s, everyone was putting out a bay rum. So this was a situation where Pinaud was jumping on a bandwagon. They were jumping on a bandwagon when they released this because you had the original A.H. Rees, which is a Dutch brand, the original A.H. Rees bay rum from St. Thomas Islands. Okay, you had that product. You had various bay rums from different British barbershops. So Taylor of Old Bond Street had a bay rum. You also had, in America, you had some brands putting out bay rums. California Perfume Company had a bay rum, later on known as Avon. And then, of course, there was an actual St. Thomas bay rum brand named after the island. That was also around, too. And as time went on, everyone just rolled out a bay rum. So, like I said, by the end of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th century, very common. So, of course, Pinaud put out one. And Pinaud's became the only really widely available one after a time. After the whole thing came and went and blew over and people moved on to other aftershaves, they moved on to Skin Bracer, they moved on to a host of other things. The last man standing in the big box drugstore, right, was this one. All the other ones had crawled back into a smaller market, went back to their original suppliers and sold in their boutiques, right, became exclusive. more expensive. But, you know, this one was the one that you could find anywhere. So, like, C&O Bigelow's Bay Rum, Castle Macy's Bay Rum, all those are gone. But you can still go into a Rite Aid. You can still go into, like I said, Duane Reade, a Bartell Drug. You can go into some Walgreens, some CVS have it. You know, Asda, Walmart. And you'll find this. So, Walmarts aren't too keen on carrying Pinaud products. They're not too keen on carrying them. But when they do, when you find something, it's usually this one. Or the actual Clubman fragrance itself, which I'm getting to that, by the way. So we're 20 minutes in. I haven't forgotten you guys. This smells like you'd expect. Bay leaf, cinnamon, clove. Nothing doing. It's Bay Rum, okay? And it's dependable. Again, not particularly interesting. Its biggest sin is that it's not interesting. But you're probably not looking for interesting if you're wearing this. Let me just be honest here. Now, let's move on to the big one. The one that you've waited 20 minutes for me to bring up. The original Clubman Pinaud fragrance. The one that is in all the movies, all the TV shows. If you know what Evil Dead is, and you know the character Ash from Evil Dead, he loves wearing this stuff. He splashes this on before he kills deadites, before he gets his chainsaw and hooks it on his little nub and goes, "Hail to the king, baby," and all that. He puts on a little Clubman, and then he goes and he saves the world from the undead or whatever. So this is the one, okay? So the history of this is intertwined with the history of this guy right here. I don't have to get up for this one. I can just... There you go. Now, this one, if my camera will behave... Come on, camera. You can do it. I have faith in you. I have faith that you can zoom in. No, you're going to be a bitch and refuse to zoom in. Fine, fuck you. So, my camera would not zoom in, but that's a bottle of Canoe. And the history of Canoe is intertwined with the history of this. Because Canoe, at that time, was an expensive upmarket fragrance. So, the GIs were coming back from World War II. And it was an imported product from France. Not that this wasn't also an imported product from France, but that was bottled and shipped over as it was. So Clubman came about because the Pinaud company was kind of failing. So what happened was the brain trust of the E.D. Pinaud house sold basically a controlling interest to a family in New York City. The name of this family eludes me right now. If you read my written review on Clubman Pinaud, it talks about this family. I wrote the name of the family down in that review, but unfortunately, I am not an AI. I'm not Grok. I'm not Alexa. I'm not Siri. I am not Wikipedia. So stuff goes in my mind, and sometimes it goes out the other side. So the name does not register with me right now. But this family, who still owns the brand to this day, mind you, this family said, okay, we'll buy it. And they basically just further trimmed the fat. They just really turned what was once, like I said, big, illustrious fragrance house, and they just turned it into a rank and file drugstore shaving brand, because that's where the money was. Like I said earlier, follow the money. And that is what happened with the Pinaud brand. It continued to follow the money. Where it was profitable was where it went to stay in existence. So what they did was they reached out to, French oil houses, who at that time would have probably been someone like Fragonard, Molinard, or one of those. It wouldn't have been IFF or, in New York, or it wouldn't have been Firmenich or one. Maybe some similar, Dallaire, Harmon, Reimer, whoever was around at that time. But they basically had a fragrance whipped up that smelled just like Canoe. Very similar. Not that different from Canoe. The big differences between Canoe, and this is an original bottle, by the way. This is not a 70s or 80s. This is an original. This is an original 30s, 40s, 50s bottle. In the 60s, things changed, but this is an original like production run bottle. This is a little more on the vanilla side, a little more on the heliotrope, a little more on the powdery stuff. Whereas the Clubman scent goes a little bit greener. So a little more lavender, a little more oak moss, a little more tonka, a little more of a basic fougere. Still powdery, still vanilla, still on that train of thought, just a little more simplified to get it cheaper. And then they imported the essence from France and compounded it in the US and put it in these bottles. And the effect that had was cost reduction. You get your essences imported from France as raw oil, then you do all the compounding and all the cutting and bottling here in the US, you get a much cheaper price. Clubman was originally available in both cologne and aftershave, but you can guess which one was the successful one, which one stayed in production. The Clubman cologne remained until the 70s, but it had different bottles over the years, square bottles, glass bottles, different things. And it was just called Clubman. It didn't say Clubman Pinaud on it. It was called Clubman and then by Pinaud at the bottom. Whereas the Clubman Pinaud, which is this, is the aftershave. And it always came in these bottles like this, with this tall man and the stovepipe hat and the cane, and he's wearing the frock there with the big tie and stuff, looking like a dandy. This ended up dominating the market because Pinaud went into all of the barbershops, they went into all the drugstores, and they gave away free samples to the business owners, not the people that shop there, but all the barbers, all the hair cutters, all the different druggists, chemists, and said, here, take a case of bottles, little sample bottles, give them away to your customers. Everyone that gets a haircut, everyone that buys something from you, give them a bottle of our product just for free. And if they like it and they come back and they want to buy more, we'll sell you more. And that was a genius move because it was cheaper than Canoe, smelled similar to Canoe, and all the barbershops wanted to stock it. All the druggists wanted to stock it. Everybody wanted it because it smelled like the popular fragrance up there, but for a fraction of the price. And most guys in those days would put on cologne as aftershave anyway, so they didn't really need a separate cologne. They could just do this for everything. And the rest is kind of history. This became the smell of the American barbershop. And that's why to this day, it's like this and the Bay Rum are the ones you find the most. Now, I will touch upon some of the other ones before I wrap the video up. I will touch upon the Special Reserve and the Vanilla. First, we'll do the Special Reserve. So what's really weird about the Special Reserve is a lot of people compare this to Vintage Tabaron, an old gray cap fragrance by Creed. I've smelled that fragrance, and I can tell you, yes, this little $7 plastic bottle, I repeat, $7 plastic bottle, does smell very much like a discontinued $800 to $1,000 bottle of Creed. There are some notable differences, obviously, but it's one of those good enough for government work kind of things, right? And then we have this one, the classic vanilla. Now, if you buy the canned shave cream, that comes in the original Clubman fragrance. If you buy the shave soap with the brush, that smells like this. Or the cold shave cream, like the brushless shave cream, that smells like this. So if you want an aftershave to match the soap, to match the cold cream, you want the vanilla. If you want an aftershave to match the can foam, then you want the original. Just so you guys know. The vanilla has a lot of lavender in it. So it's not strictly a vanilla fragrance. It is vanillic, yes, but it's got lavender, other florals, subtle bits of musk and woods, It's a well-rounded fragrance. It's a very masculine fragrance despite that vanilla intonation. And it's very clean. This actually smells a lot like the extremely discontinued, extremely expensive Petit Pour Homme Privé from 1992 or 3, I believe. So if you don't want to spend $1,500 on a bottle of Petit Pour Homme Privé, if you want something that costs like $7 and smells just like that, I actually had a bottle of Petit Pour Homme Privé that someone gave to me, and I traded it out to a friend for a bunch of other things because that one bottle to him was worth like 6 or 7 of his things that were also hard to find things. So I got that in return. I wasn't going to wear that Privé. I mean, it smelled good, but I have this. So, and it's the same kind of deal where it's like, it's good enough for government work. And there you guys have it, man. Clubman Pinaud. I'm not sure how the brand still survives because you don't see their products in a lot of places anymore. You used to see it more commonly in drugstores, but now you don't. But they're still more common than your artisanal brands like Phoenix or Floyd or whatever those other ones are. So they're more common than Skin Bracer, but less common than something you'd have to get off of like Strawberry Net or Small Flower. But very interesting history. A case of how the mighty have fallen, basically. And now there's a new relaunched E.D. Pinaud brand out there that has no relation to the original company. The only surviving piece of the original house is this Clubman range, which is just funny to me. All right, catch you next time.